Your wants, your needs, they matter. Whether or not they fall in lockstep with any kind of religious or societal convention, they matter. Finding the right person or people that you connect with, that you can develop a relationship with and love is way more important than what they believe about anything. There's so much out there that you could be experiencing and learning about and learning what you like and what you don't. But up until now, all of that's been clouded by decisions that are based on whether or not this is a sin. Your wants, your needs, they matter. Whether or not they fall in lockstep with any kind of religious or societal convention, they matter. Above and beyond what's going to make any fake deity happy, you have the right to be happy.
Welcome to Unbound,
A podcast for new atheists,
and lifetime atheists,
ex-evangelicals.
truth seekers, and free thinkers.
There is life after faith.
And life here is good. It's time for a new perspective.
And a better conversation. I'm Spider.
And I'm Shelle, and it's time to get unbound.
You know, I'm once again finding myself in a place where I feel like we have some unfinished business to attend to.
Oh, yes.
With last week's episode, last week we talked about how important it is to decide on your own moral code and start living life more on your terms and under more unbound kinds of conditions. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that we definitely did have some things left to say about this. I'm not calling it a part two. I really want the message here to kind of stand on its own. I will be pulling from some of the stuff we talked about last week, but this week I really want to talk about the now what aspect of this, where you find yourself for the first time experiencing just a little bit of freedom and probably don't know what the hell to do with it.
Right.
Okay, so that is what we're going to be talking about tonight. And if you hang out long enough tonight, you're going to learn why I'm called the Orange Spider. And believe me when I tell you, it is a story that is worth sticking around for. Normally, when people ask me about that, my answer is maybe 2 lines long. And I tell them that that's the public version. If you want the private version, it'll cost you a beer. Well, I don't think I'm ever going to drink beer again after tonight. Because after tonight, the whole world's going to have access to this story. And it's a lot of fun. And it's going to provide you with a really good example of the kinds of things that are out there and available to you. If you could just get this concept called sin out of your head. Before we get into that, I do want to touch on a couple of things here. Shelle has had herself a week. You are working from home.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm working from home, and it is an experience for me that I have never had, and I'm getting used to it, but it was kind of hard for the first few days.
Yeah, you seem to be dealing with it well. Apparently, medical marijuana is considered a necessity. It's considered a vital service or whatever they're calling it here. So I'm still working and I'm getting my hours and everything is looking good. And Shelle is home and she's getting her hours and everything's looking good. So when those stimulus checks come through, we should be in really, really nice shape for a little while. And that's going to help us out a lot. But what's really helpful is the fact that we're not losing income right now.
Yeah.
That we're not jumping through hurdles and having to apply for unemployment and all of that stuff. It's just an all-around good thing, a good place that we find ourselves right now. But it has also left her with a little bit less time to focus on things like Christians behaving badly segments for podcasts. Right now, we find ourselves in a place where there's literally story after story after story of Christians, particularly Christian pastors, who have not canceled their services, are still telling people that they should be coming together, still holding services, and as if that wasn't enough, there's one of our favorite Bible colleges that is now back in session with a few tweaks, but the tweaks that they've made don't make this any less stupid. Let's talk about 1,800 people being in one place at one time amid the worst pandemic that we've seen in our lifetimes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? But that's what happened in this Louisiana church. 1,825 people attended the Sunday morning service last week at Life Tabernacle Church in Baton Rouge. There were 26 buses used to pick people up from all over the area.
Oh, boy.
And they were transported by bus.
Oh,
Yeah, talk about social distancing. Transported by bus, and I'm sure by packed bus, to this service that 1,825 people were in attendance. And this is just more of that evangelical arrogance at work. Pastor Tony Spell is the pastor of this church, and he thinks that the way to handle a pandemic is through laying on of healing hands. Let that sink in. How is this thing passed around? What are they telling us all to do, like 75,000 times a day? And judging by the way my hands look, I've been keeping up with it. But it's important. We're being told to wash our hands constantly.
right.
And not only is this idiot not telling people how they can remain healthy through all of this, he is flat out telling people to do the exact opposite of what any expert out there will tell you is smart. 1,825 people in one place in the midst of a global pandemic. This is what is called evangelical logic. The pastor of this church said that if anyone in his congregation contracts COVID-19, he will heal them. So it doesn't matter.
Wow.
If you get this, all you have to do is go to this guy, and he is going to lay his hands on you, probably smear more of it on you, and probably make you sicker. Because I would be very, very surprised to learn that he doesn't have it. And so, yeah, he thinks that if anybody comes down with this, all they really have to do is come to him, and he's going to be like Moses lifting up the serpent in the wilderness, and they're all going to just be healed. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he used that verse as part of his reasoning with his congregation when he was getting these people to agree to not forsake the gathering together of the brethren during a time when the brethren can kill each other by simply being in the same room with each other. Now, the governor of Louisiana addressed this whole thing and basically put out an appeal to faith leaders saying that, quote, he would urge all faith leaders to heed the directive and not necessarily engage in mass gatherings. It's amazing how they have to walk on eggshells with these people, isn't it?
Yes, it's really
The
irritating.
wording here is irritating. To not necessarily engage. No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Governor Edwards. The words you're looking for there are, I would urge faith leaders to tell their people to stay home.
Yeah.
Because these people look to you for guidance. They're looking to you to basically be their brains and tell them to stay home.
Right.
That's what that should say. But it really just, it boggles my mind how these people are always so completely coddled to the point where when you're addressing them directly, you have to address them like they're children. Guess what? That's next week's episode, or within the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
Because there's something else I want to talk about before when we're done with this. But the sheer arrogance of this, and I use that word a lot when it comes to this subject, but there is a signature arrogance to the notion that as the pastor of a church, you somehow have the power to circumvent nature. This virus is just looking for places where it can thrive. It's not sentient. It's not going one place or another, and it is not under the control of any person. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the position that we are in being asked to stay home.
Right.
But that, and that's the thing. We're being asked to stay home. Most people are being smart. Most people are minimizing what they need to do in terms of travel, in terms of going out, and that's wonderful. But when you put it in 1,800 people's heads that they're going to be safe, and you have no way of keeping them safe, that is just flat out wrong. There is no other way to look at this. There's no other way to see it. It is just wrong. Why is it wrong? Because here's the type of thing that happens when you don't cancel your church services and people come together and maybe one or two people in the crowd have it. 34 people connected with one Arkansas church have tested positive for COVID-19.
Wow.
Oh, and look, it's an Assemblies of God church in Greers Ferry, Arkansas. 34 people connected with the ministry have tested positive for COVID-19. All of them were in the building during a recent, wait for it, children's event. All of them were in the building for a children's event that they didn't bother to cancel. I'm sorry, but that makes me angry.
Yeah.
It makes me real angry. You know what, people? You want to put your own selves at risk over your faith, over this fairy tale that you insist on believing in, that's fine. Can we leave the children out of it?
Right.
Please and thank you. Leave the kids out. They do not have the autonomy to recognize or understand what they're doing. They don't have the choice as to whether or not they're going to follow you there.
Right.
And you are just dragging them into harm's way. Shame on you. If you are doing this, you need to stop. I'm sorry that I'm getting a little hot under the collar, but come on, we're talking about children here.
Yeah.
31 infected people are members or staffers. 2 were visiting evangelists, and 1 was one of the children. Now, in this particular instance, guess what? Both the pastor of this church and his wife came down with it. Now, all of a sudden, it's serious.
Yeah.
Where's your God now, buddy? Where is he? Where is he, Pastor Mark Polinsky? Where is your God now? And where is his healing power? Well, it's amazing how quickly logic and reason take over once you're the one who's affected.
Right.
You're not just the person telling people to come together and not worry about it. Now you've got it. Now your wife's got it. Someone that you actually love and care about has this, and you have it.
Yeah.
It amazes me how all of a sudden this is a problem because I've got it.
Right.
Okay? And here's what this prick had to say. I would love to have you take this medical threat more seriously. Dude, it should have started with you.
Right.
Maybe you assume that it couldn't happen to you just like I did. Please adhere to the social instructions that you are receiving locally and nationally. We must keep the affected population to as low a number as possible. Yeah, you think?
What a great idea.
And then he goes on with his mea culpa here. It says, there was very little in my training for the ministry that covered the full measure of what our church family has dealt with in the past few weeks. The intensity of this virus has been underestimated by so many. Who's that? Who has underestimated the intensity of this virus? It has brought a planet to a standstill.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, no one except you, is underestimating this, and people like you underestimating this. No, this is you and your wigged out thinking, and the wigged out thinking of people who think like you, who think that they're immune because your God is greater. Really? Ask the people in your congregation who are now sick if their God is greater than this thing.
Yeah.
If he is, why aren't they back in church, and why aren't they healed? And he continues with, an act of wisdom and restraint on your part can be the blessing that preserves the health of someone else. Eureka, he finally fucking gets it.
Yeah.
I mean, it took over 30 people coming down with this god-awful thing to finally get him to see reason, but now he gets it because he's among the 34. And, I mean, just don't even get me started with this.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Don't even get me started with how this person led all these people into harm's way, and now, all of a sudden, oh yeah, this seems a little bit more serious than we thought it was. Well, you know what? Maybe put down your Bible, maybe turn off your favorite televangelist, and tune into a credible news source, or go to the CDC website.
Yes.
Or watch any of the videos that are coming out from the World Health Organization. There are all kinds of resources that can teach you what you need to know about this. But the only way that anyone's going to underestimate the intensity of this is if they are closed off to the facts. Okay? Either closed off to the facts or arrogant enough to think that they're above the circumstance.
Right.
You know, my God will save me. My God will heal me. My God is bigger than this thing. Well, you know, it's microscopic. Pretty much anything is bigger than this thing.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that something bigger is more powerful. Nature is nature.
Yeah.
Nature is very fickle. Nature doesn't really care who you are, what you are, anything like that. When something like this happens, it's totally indifferent to the impact that it has. Hurricanes are indifferent to the impact that they have. Earthquakes, anything that happens in nature, any kind of disease, And this last guy, I think he even said, I skipped over it a little bit, but I think he even said this virus is no respecter of persons. No virus is a respecter of persons. Nothing in nature is a respecter of persons. You think that just because you come from nature that it's going to love you? It doesn't
Right.
matter.
No.
It doesn't matter. We live in a very indifferent universe. Get over it. And that's why people are getting sick. Because an indifferent universe is playing host to this thing that is very, very pervasive. And if you are not careful, you will get it.
Yes.
Okay? It's that simple. Want another example of what you shouldn't be doing right now? Liberty University students return to campus amid coronavirus outbreak. You have got to be kidding. Now, in all fairness, they have made certain changes
Right.
to how they're doing things, but I think they've only made those changes because of state mandates. I think that
Right.
if there weren't certain mandates in place, it would be business as usual at this place, and they would have an entire campus. 5,000 students, most under the age of 25,
Right.
and an outbreak like you wouldn't believe if they just went ahead with business as usual. There will be cases. There will be cases. Even though they've gone to online classes, the kids are allowed to live in the dorms.
Ugh.
They are eating in the cafeteria. They are socializing with each other freely on campus.
Yeah.
People are gonna get it. People
Yeah.
are gonna get it. And you know what? The people who run this shit show that is Liberty University should be ashamed of themselves. And any other institute of higher learning who isn't taking this, whose administrators aren't taking this seriously enough to take more proactive action here. I don't know what else to say. Are you that fucking stupid?
Yeah. Right.
Are you that fucking stupid that you think that even with stories like the one I just read out there, where you know that people are going to church, they're coming together in these big groups for the same purposes and reasons and under the same circumstances that you are, and they're getting it, and yet you somehow think you're going to be immune. Let's see. There were a couple of quotes here. I don't know if I can stand to read them, but
Yeah.
just to give an overview of what they're doing. Classes are resuming online for the remainder of the semester in compliance with state guidelines. Okay?
Right.
So this has nothing to do with anyone at the college. The academic buildings, fitness center, and library will all remain open.
E.
Yeah, go to the fitness center and breathe.
No.
Nice and deep.
Ew. No.
I don't understand this at all. It just, even if I was one of these students, I would be like, look, I'm not coming back.
Yeah. Right.
I can take my classes online. The internet goes everywhere. That means I can take my class anywhere.
That's right.
And no, even at that point, I wouldn't be going back there with this pie in the sky thought of no deadly thing shall harm me. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? This deadly thing is harming a lot of Christians.
Yeah,
Okay?
it is.
They're not immune, and we need to start waking up.
Well, and they're putting themselves in danger. They are putting themselves in danger by refusing to acknowledge the danger of this particular virus and not doing what everyone is advising them to do, except for their pastors.
Well, that's the problem. They're trained to listen to their pastors
Right.
above pretty much anyone else. And I understood this. I knew this when I was going into the ministry. So, of course, my take on that was that I had a responsibility
Right.
to these people, because as much as I liked the idea of people thinking for themselves, I knew then that most of the people just sitting there in the pew are never going to reach a point where they are able to do that. They're always going to look to me for their answers. So as their leader, as their pastor, as their shepherd, as the representative to them of the loving God that they are supposed to be serving, it's my responsibility to give them good advice and keep them safe.
Right.
Like any good shepherd would his sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are a pastor and you have not canceled your services, just like I said last week, you're wrong and you are hurting people.
Right.
And here's hoping that it doesn't take 30 people in your congregation, including yourself, to contract this thing before you understand just how serious it is. because it is really, really serious. You want to talk about Christians behaving badly? This is Christians behaving potentially murderously.
Yeah.
And it needs to stop. And I need to catch my breath a little bit before we start this next segment, so give this a quick listen. I believe that we have a responsibility to speak up. I believe we have a responsibility to tell our story and provide a platform for others to tell theirs. And we need your help with all of that. Go over to our website, getunbound.org. That's get-unbound.org right now and tap the link to our Patreon account. Just $5 a month. We are just one small voice, but that voice can be made bigger. You can help make it bigger. Just $5 a month. Think about it. It may not seem like that big of a deal, but even just a small group of committed people giving a small amount can have a huge impact. It's time to start helping people in tangible ways to get and stay unbound. And they'll only get there if we work together and support each other. Thanks so much for listening and for at least considering what you can do to help us keep doing what we do. And with that, onward into our main topic. Now, I get to relax a little bit because now I'm going to be talking about happy things.
Happy things.
The way that most churches and pastors, well, not most, the way that some really radical churches and pastors are dealing with this is disgusting.
Yes.
And it really, really gets under my skin. So I didn't mean to spend the first 20 minutes of this episode yelling, but I mean, it's a yell-worthy kind of thing to talk about. There is such a thing as righteous anger, and you just saw some. You just saw a good surge of it. I don't see I could never see myself as a pastor telling people to come to church right now.
Right.
I just couldn't see the way clear to do it. But you know what? We're dipping back into the previous segment, and now I want to talk about happy things. Last week we talked a lot about how your morals and your ethics are up to you to decide, and that there are new things that you could be experiencing right now. And I get the apprehension. And I understand that there's probably a lot of people out there who are listening to last week's episode and are thinking to themselves, okay, but how do I go about this?
Right.
How do I go about getting out? You make it sound easy. Well, no, it's not easy. It's anything but easy. But it is simple. But you see, those two things are not the same thing. A simple concept can have a really, really complex execution. And this is one of them. Because the simple concept here is just stop believing in this shit and get out. But,
right.
You know, for some people, even if they want to, it may not seem like it's an option. I mean, what happens if you are married to someone who married you under the circumstance that you were a Christian, and now you know better, and now you want out, but you don't want to destroy your marriage? You see, the simple thing is getting out. The complex part is figuring out how to not kill your marriage getting out.
Right.
Okay? There is that. And then you've got the people who they have to know based on who their parents are and what their upbringing was and how deep they are into this thing, the very distinct possibility that they'll be shunned by their families.
Right.
Now, I think that it's a fear that a lot of people have, and it probably doesn't happen quite as often as we hear about, you know, or as it seems based on how many times we hear about it happening. But it does happen, and it's a real fear. So what if I'm dealing with someone who's third or fourth generation evangelical, and now I tell them I don't believe in God anymore? Well, will I still be invited for Thanksgiving? I mean, who knows? Who knows? And that's where the complexity comes into play.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to have all the answers for you because your situation is very, very individual in nature. But I can talk a little bit about some of the decisions that I made even before I completely dumped theism. I kind of dumped the concept of being a born-again Christian several years before that and had already made some strides toward having a life of my own before I gave up on it completely. But of course, it's always in the back of my mind, Jesus probably wouldn't like this very much. And it stayed there for a long time. Even when I was at a point where I honestly didn't really believe in it all that much anymore, it was still the whole Pascal's wager thing weighed in my mind a lot. And it's like, okay, so how much do you want to do to sabotage your chances at a good eternity? Because that was in my head for a long time. And when I say a long time, the first time I heard it, I was a kid. I was probably 14 or 15 years old. And my mother, she didn't use the term Pascal's wager, but she said basically the same thing. Basically, what she told me is, well, you know what? We have no way of knowing whether or not what we believe here is right. But in the grand scheme of things, even if it's not, and even if there's nothing after, is this such a bad way to live your life? Well, no, it's not until it starts taking your life away from you.
Right.
Now, you see, you can live Christian principles and not have to wear the cover. And I mean, there are a lot of things that I still do that would be considered Christian in nature in terms of things like compassion,
Right.
and giving and gratitude. All of these things are Christian concepts. Joy, believe me, I have a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Now that I'm out of this thing, I have plenty of joy. But, you know, joy is also a Christian concept. All of the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, kindness, all of the things that that are the major positives work whether you're a Christian or not. So you don't have to wear that label. You don't have to be a Christian to follow what Jesus said about loving your neighbor and loving yourself.
Right.
You know, there are all kinds of good lessons that can be learned here. But when you start thinking about them from the perspective of a literal person said this, and I have to do things this way, that's where freedom starts to diminish. And that's when you start feeling those shackles. Why do we call our show Unbound? Because this religion that was supposed to offer me freedom in Christ always made me feel pretty damn shackled.
Yeah.
Okay? And when I finally decided that I was done with it, the sense of liberation that came with it was like someone unbinding me, dropping those real heavy shackles to the ground, listening to them clunk, and walking away from them and leaving them in the past. It was just like that. And it was not just a one-time momentary thing. It was a lot of things over a lot of time. And I got to tell you, now that I think these thoughts as me, and I don't try to convince myself that God is speaking to me, it makes it so much easier to simply do the right thing because it's the right thing, and not because I'll get a cookie after I die.
Yeah.
So tonight, let's talk about some of the things that that I've experienced since basically taking off the born again cover. And I was still a Christian for quite a while after deciding that we were done with the Pentecostal stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we remained Christians for a while. We were in the Episcopal Church, and I still took my faith seriously. I still weighed a lot of my actions against what would Jesus do. There was a lot of that. But over time, I started doing these things for more personal reasons. I stopped doing them because it was what Jesus wanted, and started doing them because I felt better being a good person, being a better person, striving to be a better person, making decisions because they were the right course of action and not the easiest.
Right.
You see, that's the thing about people. And I've said this on the show before, but when I've said it to people just in conversation, and it's kind of a mind blower, but it's true. People are not interested in doing the right thing. They're interested in doing the most convenient thing at that moment.
Right.
Okay. And a lot of times right and wrong doesn't factor into it because we are a very selfish species. We want things the way we want them. We want to be comfortable. We want the things that we want, and that's it. That's why people who have been divorced get remarried when their spouses are still alive, even though the Bible says don't do that.
Right.
It's a selfish thing, but at the same time, it's also a necessary thing for your happiness. And at the end of the day, most people, even the ones that read their Bibles between church services, understand that there's a degree of logic that just gets lost in the concept of, well, I made a mistake and married the wrong person, so now I have to live without companionship. I have to live without affection. I have to live without sex for the rest of my life. Bullshit. No, you don't. And even Christians who are still Christians, who still go to church every Sunday, understand this. The worst thing that happened out of that whole thing is that my mom's husband was not allowed to be on the church board. That was his punishment for marrying a woman who was divorced. And that's and I'm sorry if that's the biggest if that's the biggest consequence, then I don't really think that it was that bad of an action.
No.
You know, oh, you can't be in our club. Big fucking deal. I can't be in your club. So let's talk a little bit about that concept. We talked last week about, you know, the whole thing with first marriages and how when you get married for the wrong reasons, it's destined to fail. Most of the time, it's destined to fail. But this week, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, you know, why people skirt over that verse. Why do Christians skirt over that verse and just get married anyway? Well, it really does boil down to the fact that they understand a few things about themselves, and they have a better picture of God in their head than what's in the Bible. And the reason for that is that they're constantly told that God is loving and merciful and that he's a good parent. So they start thinking about it in terms of, well, if God loves me the way my parents love me, my parents would want me to be happy.
Right.
So if my parents would want me to be happy and God loves me more and better than my parents ever could, then why would he want me to spend the rest of my life miserable because I made a mistake? I've repented of that really bad choice that I made, and now I feel like I just deserve to be happy. And you know what? I would agree wholeheartedly, and the pastor that married my mother and her husband agreed wholeheartedly. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
They would have been sent someplace else. They would have been told, sorry, but I can't do this. So even the pastor of that church, knowing that verse full well, stood there and officiated that ceremony. In fact, there were two pastors from that church that officiated because they couldn't decide between the two.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
Okay.
So you had both of them up there doing something.
Right.
I think that it was our senior pastor that did most of it, but then there was another one that we all really liked a lot,
Right.
who was part of this. It was 1989. I don't remember everything about that particular day, but I do remember that there was a lot of support from people who were leaders in that church, all of whom knew the Bible as well as the next one did, and celebrated this thing, celebrated this union that the Bible condemns.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, people are going to do what they want, and even born-again Christians are going to do what they want because deep down there, they understand that it couldn't possibly be wrong to be happy with someone.
Right.
Now let's talk about the someone or someones involved in this. Let's just say, just a hypothetical situation here. Since you got out of this thing, or now that you are in the process of wanting to get out of this thing, guess what? You got a whole lot more options. You don't have to worry about being unequally yoked anymore. This one was a major bone of contention for me when I was in too.
Right.
Even though I managed to judge a lot of people for doing the exact same thing, I still thought that it was pretty unfair trying to tell people who they were allowed to love based on various criteria. If you were male, that person had to be female. If you were female, that person had to be male. And they also had to adhere to the same beliefs that you had. Otherwise, you were what is called being unequally yoked. And that means one of you is on their way to heaven and the other is on their way to hell. And that is a problem in Christian circles. Well, guess what? Like we talked about last week, there's no such thing as sin. There are actions and consequences, and you need to decide whether or not you want to bring good things into your life or bad things into your life. Want to bring good things into your life? Engage in good actions. Want to bring bad things into your life? Engage in bad actions, because good follows good and bad follows bad. It's not a 100% hard and fast rule. I've seen a lot of really good people go through a lot of crazy shit.
Yeah.
But by and large, if we're making the right decisions and choices, then we're going to have a happier life than we would if we weren't. Okay? When we make bad choices, it makes bad things happen in our lives. When we make good choices, it makes good things happen. Finding someone that you connect with, that you like, that you want to spend time with, and just engaging in building that relationship, those are good actions, and they're bound to have a good outcome. And that good outcome could also mean that you're not with that person anymore. That's a good outcome, even though it hurts like hell at the beginning. It's a good
Right.
outcome because better you find out in the first 5 years than after 20 or 30 or more. And it does happen. Lots of people divorce who have been married longer than we have.
Right.
It happens a lot. So finding the right person or people, and that's going to be important in a little while. Finding the right person or people that you connect with, that you can develop a relationship with and love is way more important than what they believe about anything. But as a Christian, you were taught differently. And that thinking is going to stick in your head. And what that does is it makes you a lot more critical and judgmental because you are approaching every potential relationship now with a certain criteria. And even if you take this whole Christianity thing out of the mix, you're probably still looking at that other person way more critically than you should. Let me give you some advice. Don't try to figure people out immediately. Don't try to figure someone out on a first date. If the date goes well, fantastic. If it really, really doesn't go well and you don't think that it's worth pursuing anymore, then get out. But don't be so judgmental and don't be so critical of the situation that you miss out on getting to know those parts of that person that you need to be able to determine whether or not you want this thing to continue.
Right.
It's something that a lot of Christians really have issues with coming out of this, especially because now, number one, they have a hard time figuring out who they should be trying to connect with because they've been told that there's this set of guidelines and they don't know what to look for. They don't even know what they want. So if that's you, first thing you need to do there is admit it. Admit that you don't know what you want. And the next time you find someone interesting enough to ask out or someone asks you out and you find them interesting enough to go out on a date, this is when you're going to start cataloging the things that you really want. Because as an evangelical, it was just, is this person a Christian? And then everything else was secondary. Well, guess what? You can take that out of the equation now and actually think about the things that matter to you. Go out on some dates. Go out with a few different people. Start cataloging the things that you like about them and the things that you don't. You'll start gravitating toward personalities that jibe more with yours. Okay? And you'll stop taking dates or asking people out that are not going to work out. You'll start zeroing in more on what you want. And don't sit there thinking that I'm talking about a relationship that culminates with marriage. Hey, I got a little secret for you here. Just because you're in love doesn't mean that you have to get married, or at least not immediately, you know? So maybe just think about the concept of getting to know this person. And after a while, you can start thinking about where you want the relationship to go, what kind of things you see happening in the relationship down the road, but take the time. You see, this is one of the problems that we saw at Bible college.
Oh, yeah.
People not taking the time to get to know each other and understand what they wanted in a marriage relationship. If you only dated a couple of people, and most Christians, especially Christian girls,
Oh, yeah.
have only dated a couple of people before they decide on one to marry. And that's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. Not knowing what's out there, not knowing what you want, not knowing whether or not you're going to be compatible with that person on every important level can lead to disaster. If you don't get married and you take the time to suss these things out and allow the relationship to go where it's going to go, it makes it a lot easier because every relationship has a start point and it has an end point. It's either going to end with a breakup or it's going to end with someone dying. But every relationship eventually ends. So you need to figure out what it is that you want out of your relationships. Maybe you're not interested in getting married. And that's fine. Guess what? You can still have sex. And you should. Now, I had somebody contact me over Twitter and mentioned to me that I didn't say anything about protection or anything like that last week. So I'll give the little plug. If you lived enough of a sheltered existence that you don't understand how to use a condom and don't understand why it's important to use a condom, I would definitely check out some resources on STDs and the types of things they can do to you. It may not seem romantic, but it will allow you the opportunity to keep exploring without hurting yourself or hurting anybody else in the process. So if no one has ever talked to you about safe sex and you don't understand it, I'm not going to take the couple of hours it's going to take to go over everything that you need to know here. But there are plenty of good resources, even just to the point of going to YouTube and just putting safe sex in the search and then finding something from some sort of clinician,
Right.
not someone with their own gonzo YouTube channel, but someone that has clinical training who can explain this in a way that is logical and not emotional. You're going to get it a whole lot better. And then you can make the intellectual decision to be safe. And that's important.
Right.
Understanding why you have to use that condom. Understanding why you have to ask persons questions about their sexual past. Understanding these things is going to make you smarter, and it's going to protect you both physically and emotionally. You'll learn a lot about a potential partner when you start discussing with them how your sex life is going to be and how they respond to that. You're going to learn a lot about that person, and you may very well learn enough to decide whether or not you want to even pursue that kind of relationship with them in the first place. If there's any kind of red flag in your head about it, then the logical thing to do is to simply put on the brakes and look for someone else. That's going to be what makes you the happiest. Now, notice I'm not talking about anything like praying or seeking guidance from your pastor on any of this, because you're not going to get good advice from the Bible about sex. You will never get good advice from any book that demands that a rapist marry his victim.
Right.
Okay? So, yeah, if you rape a girl and you get caught, well, first you have to buy her from her father.
Yeah.
And then you have to marry her like she actually wants to spend her life with you.
Right.
Okay. So books that handle relationship dynamics that way really aren't going to help you. Okay. Books written by actual professionals who understand the physical and emotional aspects of sex and can explain the whys behind the things that you're asked to do or not do. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to be self-assured in those moments where you have to decide whether or not you want spontaneity or safety. And here's another hint for you. You can have both. And I'm just going to sort of dangle that one there and let you go out and figure out how.
Right.
Every person is different. Your wants are going to be different than mine. Your motivations are going to be different than mine. So it's pointless for me to talk to you from my own experience about this, because the experience of sex is as individual as there are people to experience it. And it's very important that you start developing a sense of what you want, what you don't want, what you like, what you don't like. Yeah. And allow yourself to like it. Please and thank you. Allow yourself to enjoy these emotions, to enjoy the roller coaster emotions of new love. Allow yourself to really be immersed in these feelings, but listen to yourself through all of it. Don't get lost in the emotion. Keep your brains involved, but enjoy it, okay? There's so much out there that you could be experiencing and learning about and learning what you like and what you don't. But up until now, all of that's been clouded by decisions that are based on whether or not this is a sin.
Right.
Just like I said last week, having sex with someone that you're not married to is not a sin. It's simply a decision. And you can make good decisions about this, and you can make bad decisions about this. The bad decisions are not sins, they're mistakes.
Right.
Mistakes are forgivable, and not by an invisible man in the sky, but by you. And that's the next part of this. You will make mistakes in matters of love and in every area of life, but this is what we're talking about right now. You'll date the wrong people. You might even sleep with the wrong people. You might be with somebody for a long time and you think that they're one thing, and then all of a sudden, surprise, you learn that they're not. It can happen, okay? And it happens in various ways. Certain things have happened around here very recently that could have made or broken our relationship. But here's the thing, and try this out in any circumstance. I'm not even talking about love, sex, relationships, anything. This is a universal concept that I have found to be true in a lot of different circumstances. Honesty, transparency, and simply asking for what you want.
Right.
Can net you a whole hell of a lot more than lies and sneaking around ever will. Okay? I'm not going to get too far into Shelle and my relationship dynamic now. Eventually I will. Hinted at it a little bit last week. You, very, very traditional in the way that you view love and sex. Me, not at all traditional. I'll add one more little spoiler to that and tell you that I am absolutely 100% straight. Okay? But there are different ways of looking at love and sex and relationships in general. Mm-hmm. Some people are able to catalog relationships in terms of platonic or romantic. Some people just look at relationships as relationships and think that a relationship is something that should be able to grow the way it's going to grow. There are people that are wired like that. There are people who are wired to like the same sex. There are people who are wired to be attracted to both sexes. There are people who really don't give two shits about sex. And there are all kinds of in-betweens. There are all kinds of subtleties. Your emotions and your sexuality are somewhere on a spectrum, just like everything else. You don't have to tie yourself down to gay, straight, anything. You don't have to label it. Just start dealing with your own brain and your own feelings and figure out where those thoughts are taking you before you make any decision about this is what I am, because you might learn a few things about yourself by simply taking God out of the equation and dealing with your own brain. Because guess what? You were all along.
Yeah.
You were all along. So just start recognizing and acknowledging that these are your wants, that these are thoughts that you are having. They're not being put in there. You are having them, and they're all valid. That's the most important part. Your wants, your needs, they matter. And whether or not they fall in lockstep with any kind of religious or societal convention, they matter, and they're valid, and they're relevant. There are definite exceptions to this rule. Things like we talked about pedophilia last week. When your wants infringe on other people's rights and have potential to do harm, then that's where more thought needs to come into play.
Right.
Okay? Because we can't be so selfish that we don't care about what our actions do to other people. We have to be mindful of it, and we have to be sensitive to it. It's also important to make sure that if the things that you want are at least somewhere on the fringes of what society is going to accept, that you look at it a little bit more closely. Are you breaking any laws? No? Okay, then fine. Then those thoughts that you're having are okay. Think about it a little bit more. Expand on that thought. Expand on your thoughts about this person. Expand on your thoughts about this other person. Are you having the same thoughts about both of them? Are you having romantic thoughts about one and just friendly platonic thoughts about the other? Or are things more complex? Well, you know what? You might wind up wanting to date this person today and this other person tomorrow. You may want to date them both at the same time. And you know what? All of that's up to you. As long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as you are being honest, you have the right and the responsibility to steer this ship anywhere you want it to go. Because you have the right to be happy. Above and beyond what's going to make any fake deity happy, you have the right to be happy. And you need to exercise that right, and you need to take it back from this fake God who has had you under his thumb for all these years. Take back your emotional freedom. It's important. It's the single most important thing that you can do as part of your getting unbound experience. We're already, I can never believe how long I can sit here and talk about some of this stuff. I do know that I want to get off into a slightly different area here and talk about other things that you may not have tried, that you want to try, that looked good when you were a Christian, but you were told were sinful. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are out there for you to experience. Let's talk about the sinful stuff like drugs and alcohol. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go snorting lines of cocaine. I'm not going to tell you to sit here and contemplate heroin, okay? I'm not going to tell you to do anything that I know can harm you. But I will tell you that there are certain things out there that you've been told are harmful that really aren't all that harmful when they are done and used responsibly.
Right.
So, first thing I want to talk about is alcohol and some of my experiences with this. I've said before, 48 years old, I've never been drunk on alcohol. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that I was around it my entire life and very, very rarely saw it abused. Now, as a child, you don't get all the subtleties of what certain adults do. I did know of a couple of alcoholics in my family, but it was a big family. It was a huge sprawling family, at least 300 people in it back in the 80s. So it's much bigger now. One of the traditions at family gatherings, especially around the holidays, was when the uncles would give the kids what they called pinkies of whatever they were drinking, and it was usually scotch. So what that meant is that they would dip their little finger into the glass, and by that time it was already pretty watered down to begin with. But they would dip their finger into the glass, and then I would come over, stick my tongue out a little bit, and let that drop on my tongue so I would get a taste of it.
Right.
Just a taste. So when I was really young, we're talking pre-puberty here, I knew what alcohol tasted like. And it was not the taboo in my house that it is in a lot of places. And it was a real bone of contention when I was going for my credentials.
Right.
Because I couldn't sit there and tell them that I thought this was wrong when I knew that in a controlled way and when used responsibly, it wasn't. It's dangerous because it is addictive. Yes, people do wind up addicted to this and it ruins their lives and it can kill you if you're not careful. It's true. But at the same time, I have a really, really difficult time with this evangelical notion that it only takes one drink. It's not the drink. Let's make sure that we understand this. The drink is not the problem here. What's going on in the head of the person
Right.
that uses that drink to deal with whatever the problem is, that is where the real issue lies. It is not with the substance. It's with the motivation behind using the substance and how heavily you start relying on it. Because if you turn to alcohol as a solution to your problem, you're going to need it more and more and more and more. And before long, yeah, you could be addicted to it. But you're not going to get addicted to it because you drank some. No. Most people I know don't really like the taste of alcohol the first couple of times they taste it. Most people I know aren't really crazy about the flavor of beer. Well, it takes a little bit of time for your palate to start understanding what beer is supposed to taste like. It's a little bit of a shock to your system the first couple of times you taste it because it does have a very distinct kind of flavor. And there are a lot of different flavors.
Yeah.
A lot of different flavor profiles. I mean, Budweiser and Guinness are not the same by any stretch of the imagination, but there are similarities that form a foundation for your experience of it. And your brain starts cataloging, I like this, I don't like this, or this is just really strange. Now, the really strange thing can kind of turn into a like or a dislike over time. There are some people who will never like the taste of beer. Then there are the ones that just want to try every kind of beer there is because there's something about it that's really pleasing on the palate.
Right.
For most, it's an acquired taste. Most people are not going to pick up a beer, drink it the first time, and think, oh, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever tasted in my life. It's an acquired kind of taste. Your palate has to learn it. But once it learns it, it starts developing preferences. And you can have a decent amount of fun with this without ever getting drunk. I've been to beer tastings. I've been to wine tastings. I've still never been drunk. Okay? And it all has to do with how much, at one time especially, when I did used to go out, and I don't go out very often anymore, and I just feel like things have kind of evolved. It wasn't a decision that I made to stop going out to the bars. It's just that it became less of a priority. It became less fun over time. And I was just kind of done with it after a while. But even when I was out, I knew how long I was going to be there. And I always gauged my drinking against how long I was going to be there. For me, because I'm a driving instructor and I know how this works, I figured one beer for every hour that I was there, I would be fine, as long as I stopped an hour before I left. So if I intended to be at that club for 5 hours, I wouldn't have more than 4 beers. And usually it was a lot less. Usually it was like 2 drinks. It was either 2 beers or 2 mixed drinks or maybe a mixed drink and a shot. And that was it for me for the night, because I wanted to make sure that when I left that place that I was not just okay to drive, but that I was sober. And I knew how long it would take for that stuff to work through my system. If I was going to leave the club at 1, I stopped drinking around 11 or 11:30, just to be safe. And, you know, even if I was offered more shots, even if it was placed right in front of me, if I knew that I was going to have to drive shortly after, I didn't want any of it in my system. So I would just stop. That's really, really good policy, and it will help you to enjoy it. Because one of the key reasons why I've never drank to the point of being drunk is because I don't like the idea of things like hangovers.
Right.
I don't like the idea of looking like an idiot in public. Okay? I've seen drunk people, and it's not always pretty. And I have found myself sitting there projecting embarrassment. You know, you know what I'm talking about. Where you feel
embarrassment.
You feel embarrassed
for the person,
for what you're seeing happening.
Yes. Secondhand embarrassment.
Yeah. So I had a lot of that. One of my first experiences with that was at your 5-year reunion.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, what goes on in that town that these people are just, oh my God.
It is one of the drunkest towns in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So...
But these people were barely 21 and 5 years out.
Oh, gee, I've never seen these people drunk legally before, but they were people who drank before.
Right. And I can still see there was one guy in particular who was so falling over drunk that he could not stand up anymore. He was out there on the dance floor, teetering around until he finally fell right flat on his back and let his beer spill all over him. It's like, now, I look at things like that, and I catalog them.
Yeah.
And even this far down the road, that's well over 2 decades ago, it's one of the first things that I think of when I start thinking about going out someplace in public and getting drunk. I do not want that to be me, period. Now, maybe you don't care. Maybe you don't care what it looks like. Maybe you're the guy with the lampshade on his head at the party. And you like the idea of attracting attention to yourself, and the idea of being drunk and just drinking with reckless abandon on the weekends is something that you want to do. Okay, that's fine. But be careful. Don't drive. Make sure that you have a way home. In this time of Uber and Lyft, when there isn't a global pandemic going on, there are a lot more options that are available to you so you don't have to drive. So if you can secure a ride, then do whatever you want. But understand that you're going to pay your penance in the morning.
Right.
If that's okay with you, great. For me, it's not an okay thing. If I'm going to have a good time, I want it to be a good time from beginning to end. What that means to me is that I'm not going to drink to excess, because tomorrow I want to remember what happened last night.
Yeah.
And I want to remember it with good memories. I don't want to be the one that gets the texts about, oh my God, do you even remember what you did? And then having to admit that I don't.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something about a little thing called cannabis. Okay? I remember every good time I've had on weed. I remember every time something really fun happened as a result of me being with people and smoking marijuana, I have a clear and concise memory of all of it. I have never once woken up after smoking weed at night with a headache or a hangover. Now, every now and then, I will wake up still a little bit hazy and still a little bit stoned from the night before. It's kind of like the ghost of the weed is still in my head. But that's the worst thing that happens. And once I either A, get some caffeine in me, or B, get a little bit of the hair of the dog that bit me and go out and smoke a little bit to kind of freshen things up a little bit, all of a sudden that murky feeling isn't there anymore. It's just kind of what I refer to as a stale high. It doesn't feel bad, but it also isn't the standard feeling that you get with this. Once it mixes with sleep chemicals and then you wake up and it mixes with those chemicals, it can be a little bit disorienting. But that's the worst thing that's going to happen. I've never woken up disoriented from weed to the point where I couldn't function or I didn't know where I was or was stumbling around and having a splitting headache. No, that's never, ever happened on this. So now that I've already segued into it, we're going to talk about marijuana for a little bit. I work with it. I deal it every single day legally. And I've seen a lot of positives come out of people using it. We talked a little bit last week about states that are legalizing and certain trends that are either diminishing or flat out reversing because people have access to this stuff legally now. When you know what the quality is, when you know where it came from, when you know how it was grown, that it's completely organic, that you're not smoking Miracle Grow, it makes a huge difference. But even the stuff that was grown in Miracle Grow has never been known to kill anyone. So you see, to me, that was the major criteria. When it came down to me and I made the conscious decision that at some point or another, I wanted to try something that would alter my mind a little bit. But I also wanted to make sure that it was going to be something that would be safe. And now, as an evangelical, especially as an evangelical teenager, I heard a lot of reefer madness bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of reefer madness bullshit. I had been told that it could hurt me, that it could kill me. All of these horrible things that this little plant that grows in the dirt could do. They never cited any sources. They never showed us any peer-reviewed study that says that if you smoke marijuana, you could be at risk for X, Y, or Z. Cannabis is one of the few, or THC, more to the point, or cannabinoids in general. THC, CBD, CBG, CBN, everything that's in that plant has the distinction of working with your body, whereas most medicines out there do not work with your body. They work against your body. And that's the key difference between marijuana and a lot of the other things out there. That's why I can smoke weed at 1 o'clock in the morning and wake up with a completely clear head, because this stuff works with me, not against me. Most medicines exist to combat things. Marijuana, cannabis, and the chemicals that are in it have a way of working with your brain, and they work in tandem with you. Not against you, not necessarily for you, just in tandem with you. So when I smoke before I sit down to do this, it keeps me more focused. It keeps me feeling a lot more relaxed and not nervous about having to sit here and listen to my own voice in my head for 2 hours. Okay. It just makes everything clearer and a lot easier to deal with, because there's such a thing as time dilation that happens with weed. Now, one of the things that can happen is that it can make 10 minutes feel like an hour. It can also make an hour feel like 10 minutes. There is that aspect of it too. But the useful and helpful thing that the time dilation does for me is it helps augment what I've learned in therapy about anger. The right weed in my head is going to give me what I need to step back if I feel angry and have that split second to think about what my reaction is going to be. So when I started using marijuana back in 2016, I started noticing real distinct differences in how I was applying things that I learned in therapy, because my brain was a lot more open to other ways of seeing certain situations. And the better parts of my nature would tell me not to be so angry. That didn't happen before. Even after a couple of years of therapy, I had gotten better at wrangling the emotions, but I hadn't really learned how to talk to me inside my head. And weed has given me that ability to talk to me inside my head, talk me down when the emotions start reaching a peak. They don't have to peak and explode anymore. I can decide how far they go, and I can rein them back in, because a lot of the parts of my brain that are fueling the anger are they're either shut off completely, or the volume has been turned so far down on them that now I can hear the logic a lot better. The emotions kind of take the back seat, and my brain just says, okay, this is how we're going to deal with this. And this has been true on or off the weed. It's been true when I'm high, and it has been true when I'm completely straight. Because after a while, your brain just learns how to do it by itself. I don't think that I'll ever reach a point where I don't need a little bit for balancing things out. But it's just that. It's a little bit. It's not like I spend my entire day with my head in the clouds. No, I don't. My job, there's so many things that I have to remember, so many steps to the process of dispensing medical marijuana. I can't afford to show up at work in a haze. So my brain has, over time, learned how to catalog what it learns when I'm high and use it when I'm straight. And it has really, really revolutionized the way that I deal with a lot of things. The way I deal with my anger, the way I deal with stresses, especially at work, the way that I deal with things at home. And even in instances where I make bad decisions, at least it's still in my head. Dude, you're making a bad decision here. And sometimes I don't have the capacity to listen, but at least the thought is in there. Before this, the thought was never in there. It was never allowed to have the floor, and now it does. These are things that weed does for me. Oh, and by the way, I love being high. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's all about the medicine. No, I love getting baked just as much as anybody else. And just for no good reason, just because I feel like getting baked. And you know what? That's okay too. You don't need a reason to use this. The only reason that you need is because you're curious and you would like to try it out. And that leads me to the story of how I became the orange spider. This is really going to put a new perspective on this whole do what you want sort of thing. Let's start around 2014, 2 years before I ever smoked weed. I can remember we were either in the car or we were sitting somewhere where we were alone, and we started having this conversation. Now, remember what I said earlier about being open, honest, and transparent and simply asking for what you want? Well, I'd never been to a strip club. It was something that I thought would be an interesting thing just to try out and just see if I liked the atmosphere at all. Right. And I already knew that some of the clubs around here, that the atmosphere wasn't going to be good. There was one place a little bit out of the way,
right,
that I had passed by a bunch of times that actually had gotten decent reviews online.
Right.
I didn't catch a bad vibe off of anything that I read on their Facebook page. It seemed like it was for a strip club, it was a decent place to go.
Right.
And I said, okay, well, if it's terrible, then, you can walk out the same door that you walked in. Mm-hmm. So one night I mustered up my courage and I drove to this club and I got out of my car and almost didn't make it to the door because it's like, oh my God, people are going to see me from the road. They're going to see me walking up to this place. What if somebody I know sees me walking into this place? Well, you know what? It's a risk that you take. And it was a risk that I took many times after that night because I went inside. The energy in there was different than anything that I'd ever experienced before. And I started not really interacting, but there's a little bit of forced interaction that goes on in a strip club because one of the things that the girls are there to do is get you to buy lap dances.
Right.
So they will come up and they'll start talking to you. Now, as a complete noob, I'm in there and I'm thinking, okay, I knew where the conversation was going. but I had no clue about strip club etiquette or anything like that at that point. So I managed to piss off a few strippers by not buying lap dances and having them sitting there at the bar and never buying them a drink or anything like that. I learned quickly because some of them are more vocal about these things than others. And you'll start learning what the culture is like and what the etiquette is and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And, you know, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on strip club etiquette during this show, but maybe down the line, if it's a little bit more relevant and I have time to spend on it, then perhaps. But just basically, it took me a while to really start figuring things out. If you are going to do this, then I recommend the first couple of times you just go and watch what's happening. Watch the different things that happen in the club. Take notice of the different things that are in the club, the different rooms that are in the club, because it's not just the stage area. Sit there and drink one of your overpriced beers and just watch what people are doing and watch what the girls are doing. It's a fun experience. You don't have to go in there and spend your entire paycheck.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
you can. It's very easy, but you don't have to. It can just be a fun experience where you sit at that bar and casually glance at the stage once in a while to see what's going on up there. Or you can start buying lap dances for $25 a pop in about 3 minutes each. That comes out to $8.33 a minute, people. Okay. It's definitely not cheap entertainment.
No.
But here's the thing. I did spend a little bit of money on those lap dances, and I wound up spending some money with one dancer in particular that I didn't really realize at the time, but she was going to change my life forever. Okay. So fast forward maybe about a year, and this new girl shows up at the club. Now, I'd already made friends with several of the girls that worked there. I always had a lot of girls around me. I didn't buy a lot of drinks. I didn't buy a lot of lap dances. I had a lot of girls hanging around me, though. You know why? Because I was a decent human being and I treated them like they were people.
Right.
And that's another thing. But before I go any further, evangelical Christianity teaches you to objectify women.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So the first time you walk into a strip club, you need to be mindful of what you've been taught and leave it at the door.
Right.
Because as soon as you walk through those doors, even though there's all kinds of politicking going on behind the scenes that you will never see, the women are driving that show.
Right.
Okay? That business exists because they're there doing what they are doing and that they're willing to do it. One of the other girls that I spent some time with, just talking and getting to know, one of the biggest things that she complained about was the entitled attitude of so many guys that sat down at that stage. And she's like, you know what? You take all your clothes off and dance in front of me for $1 and see how it feels.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got to be mindful of the fact that without the girls, you don't have an experience to
Right.
have in this place. Okay. Be decent to the girls that you interact with. Be nice, be kind. Do not be the guy that sits there at the stage and takes all kinds of liberties because you dared to put $1 up on the stage. Okay.
Yeah.
If you feel like your body and your feelings and what's yours is worth more than that, then treat the girl that you're with at that point like she's worth more than that.
Right.
You see, that's the way that I handled it. And I always had 3 or 4 girls around me when I walked into the club. Why? Because I was a nice guy and I made them feel safe.
Right.
It was that simple. And let me tell you something. When a girl feels safe with you in the VIP, you get a very, very good lap dance.
Right.
A very good lap dance. And when you show up with your wife,
Yep.
you get much, much better attention, especially at the stage. Because most guys aren't going to pull shit in front of their wives or their
Well, no.
girlfriends.
No, of
So
course
and,
not.
and the dancers know this. So they will come over and oh my goodness. I mean, there were a couple of those girls were doing things a couple of times that you came with me. It's like I was just teetering on the edge of embarrassed, like, holy shit, okay, you can stop now. You can stop now. But it was still fun.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was fun having you there.
Right.
And I can remember there was one girl before the one I'm going to tell
Yes.
them about.
Yeah.
There was one girl
I remember
before.
her, yeah.
Do you remember what happened when we went there together the first time? What she did immediately when she came over and
Yeah.
saw us? What'd she do?
Nice tits.
Well, it was more than that. It was more than that. She literally walked over and she looks at me. She's like, "Is this your wife?" I said, "Yeah." And literally just reaches out and grabs my wife by the breasts and says, "Oh my God, your tits are fabulous."
Oh, God. Yeah, it was pretty funny. And I was like, well, okay. Thank you.
I was hoping we weren't going to have a conversation about that on the way home. But
No,
no,
it was funny.
It was really funny.
It was funny because, like, you go to a strip club, it's like you can't be uptight about this stuff.
No,
you just
can't.
have to say, okay, it's gonna be a little weird, it was a little weird, but it was also funny.
And yeah, and it was definitely funny, and it was meant to be funny.
Yes,
it wasn't meant that it wasn't a move on her part.
No,
I was someone that she knew well.
Yes.
And if I was willing to sit there with my wife, in her mind, you were probably prepared for anything anyway.
Yeah, pretty much.
So now I was never brazen enough to just go off into the VIP with you sitting there alone.
No.
I was not going to leave you alone while I went off and had my fun.
Yeah.
But I had plenty of fun just sitting there at that stage.
Yeah, it was
because
a fun
the
time.
girls that came over, and there was more than one that knew me well, that came over and said hi, and then they were real interested in you.
Yeah.
So then you got to know some of the girls that I was hanging out with on the weekends.
Right.
And it actually was really, really neat going there with you those couple of times.
Oh yeah, those are happy memories. Those are fun times.
And that you actually met my bestie there, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes, I did.
So just to bring the story back into a little bit more of a linear format here, around 2015 or so, it was either late 2014, early 2015. This new girl arrives at the club, and immediately I feel there's some kind of a connection here. She was really, really funny, and she was smart.
Yes.
Way smarter than the average girl that would walk up to me and try and strike up a conversation.
Right.
Now, me being sapiosexual to the hilt, that was the first thing that I noticed. Not that she was naked on the stage, but that she was articulate.
Yes.
That she acted her age. That she seemed like she was a little bit more self-assured than most of them were.
Right.
And all of these things were big attractors for me. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it was all platonic either. But at the same time, I also knew that there were boundaries and that I wasn't going to take things further, especially in that setting, than was going to be accepted by anyone who might be looking on.
Right.
So the more I got to know her, the more we got to talking, the more it became apparent that we really liked each other, and not just in a client and entertainer sort of way.
Right.
We liked each other. We connected. We had a really good relationship inside that club. And after a little while, we both decided it would be cool to take that relationship out of the club. Well, there were a few issues. One of the conversations that I wound up having with her while we were trying to decide what our relationship was going to look like, I sort of just made a passing reference to the fact that I had never smoked weed. And she asked me why. I said, well, until a couple of years ago, it was a criminal offense in my state. I could have wound up going to jail. Now that it's been decriminalized, I'm thinking about it a little bit more. And my only real problem now is getting stuff from somebody that I trust and knowing that I'm using it right. I mean, those are the only two objections that I have left, because I'm not going to go to jail for having a couple of nugs on me. So now that there are fewer restrictions, it's something that I would definitely like to try, but I don't even know where to start. And she said, well, you just so happen to have a friend who smokes every single day. And I would be more than happy to smoke with you the first time. I would love to smoke with you for your first time and just keep an eye on you and make sure that it's a good experience for you. And it took a while to set that up, because there were a couple of problems, okay? For starters, my first name was the same as her ex-boyfriend's first name. Her current boyfriend not only knew this guy, but then there was more to the relationship, at least in the very beginning, where it was the transition away from this guy was not exactly complete when they got together, and things sort of lingered for a little while. Well, over time, things got worse between the ex-boyfriend and the current boyfriend. The ex-boyfriend was actually living with them. It was kind of an odd situation. But then there were different living situations that went on between the two of them. The bottom line was I had the same name as a guy that the current boyfriend didn't like.
Right.
So there were apprehensions on a couple of levels about me hanging out with her or coming to their place at all. Because as the boyfriend in that situation, I would have my misgivings too about some dude that she met at work, knowing where she works,
Right.
knowing that I was a client of hers. It had to seem weird. And he even said as much. He was really, really transparent. He's like, this is the craziest fucking thing that I've ever been through. And knowing some of the other things that he'd been through, that was saying a lot. Mm-hmm. But it did actually, we did finally work things out. And here's how. I could not be Joe in front of this girl's boyfriend because there was too much bad blood with the previous boyfriend named Joe. So I ceased to be Joe, and she came up with a code word that she could use with him and start softening him up to the idea of me being in that house and smoking their weed. And that was when I became the Orange Spider. Now, if you knew this girl as well as I do, this would not seem strange at all, okay? Because she has, and still does, she has a very, very unique way of looking at the world, and it's one of the things that keeps me attracted to her in the way that we are. It's completely platonic at this point, and she is my best friend, and she's still in my life. I met her in 2015, so it's been 5 years that I've known her.
Yeah.
It's been 4 years since we smoked weed together the first time. Mm-hmm. And she is still around. She's one of the very few constants in my life. She has since moved pretty far away, but she's still only as far away as a text.
Yeah.
And I talk to her frequently, almost daily still. Mm. And it's amazing to me how the one person who could have made a clean break of things and just walked out of my life forever without a word, just ghosted me out of existence and walked away. She's the one that's still around.
Yeah. Yeah.
The stripper is the only one who managed to stick around. Out of all the other relationships that I've had with other women on various levels over the years, this is the one person that sticks around.
Yeah.
It's not that we bonded over weed or anything like that. We bonded long before we ever smoked together.
Right.
But it was really, really neat to watch her fight for this because she wanted it. She really wanted me in that place to smoke with her and with her boyfriend.
Right.
She wanted me to have that experience because she knew that it would be good.
Yeah.
And she knew that it would be fun. But it might not be as much fun if I just had this bag of weed in a bowl and didn't know what the fuck to do with it.
Right.
Or how much of it to smoke at one time or what I would need. And we sat there. As a matter of fact, the anniversary of this just passed. The 13th of March. 3/13/16. It's on my tattoo. I have an orange spider tattoo on my chest with the date of the first time I smoked weed. And it was only a couple of years ago, 3/13/16. Yep. So the date just passed again. And I remember I got right on my phone and basically told her that this was my weed-iversary again. Yep. And sent her a nice message and a thank you again. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, I've smoked a few bowls since then, but I don't remember any session that I had with other people anywhere near as vividly as I remember this.
Yeah.
My first time smoking will always be there in the forefront of my mind. I can still feel that bowl in my hand. I can still see that little wisp of smoke coming up off of it as I'm contemplating doing this for the first time. I can hear her telling me how to work the carb on the side of the bowl.
Right.
It's like when you're ready for the full hit, you release it. So I don't know what the fuck a full hit is. I took 5 very anemic little hits off of this thing, little poofs of smoke coming out. You should see what my plumes look like now. But back then, I was being very conservative with it. So we passed that bowl around until it was cashed out. And I got 5 really, really tiny hits off of it. I didn't feel anything immediately. It took a little while. And then when I finally felt it kick in a little, it was so subtle that I was still questioning whether or not anything was going on. I realized it later when my perspectives on certain things seemed a little bit different. But I really didn't get all that high the first couple of times I smoked. It took a little bit of doing for me to really reach a point where I could say that I was high. But it always did something. There was always an effect. And I had kind of resigned myself to, okay, so it's subtle, but it's there. It's okay. It just doesn't seem like this is precisely how it's supposed to be. And really what it boiled down to is I needed a little bit more.
Yeah.
That was it. The next time I smoked a little bit more. I inhaled a little bit more. My plumes were a little bit bigger. There was more smoke coming out. And boom, I got stoned. Like super duper stoned. And it was everything I ever thought it could be. And as I started trying different kinds of weed, indicas, sativas, hybrids, everything in between, I started recognizing that different kinds of weed were going to do different things to my head. So when I want a certain effect, I kind of know what I need to go to now. And having medical has really helped with this. Yeah. Because when you buy off the street, they can tell you that it's anything.
Right.
But you really don't know.
Right.
When you buy from a dispensary, you know a little bit better. Although I will go on record saying that there are differences of opinions on a lot of strains as to what kind of weed they are, what they're going to do. And it's very individual in nature. And I tell people this all the time. They come into the dispensary and they say, I need something that will do this. Well, I can't guarantee that it's going to do this because whether or not it's going to do this has all kinds of factors. How much sleep you got last night, what you've had to eat today, all kinds of things like that, what your state of mind is when you sit down to smoke. Because I've found that if I'm already depressed and I sit down to smoke, I could get more depressed. Yeah. It's not going to make me feel better. But if I approach it with the attitude of, yes, I'm depressed, but I want to feel better, then all of a sudden it starts to elevate my mood a little bit more. And that I think is where a lot of people fall into the trap with drinking. Yeah. You see, they drink because they're depressed.
Yeah.
Only one problem. What is alcohol?
Depressant.
It's a depressant. So chances are you're going to feel worse when you're done. And that can be problematic. For me, it's very problematic when I'm trying to relax and the stuff won't let me relax. Now, a lot of last year was like that. Yeah. I had a hard time. I had a very hard time finding peace even when I was baked off my ass because my mental state was never quite where it needed to be to enjoy it. But when you're sitting there with people that you like and that you trust, and you're there just for the experience of smoking some weed together, I'll tell you something. There's an energy about that is unlike anything else I've ever experienced. And it's all good. It's all good. And I mean, I've never been in a group of people where I've been smoking weed and walked away from it thinking, oh my God, that was a horrible experience. Oh no. Whether I know these people well or I hardly know them at all, weed is a great thing to bond over. It's a great thing to get to know people over, and it's safe. It's not going to kill you. So those of you who have pastors and youth pastors telling you that weed can kill you, bullshit. No, it cannot. No. It is one of the safest recreational drugs out. It's the safest recreational drug out there.
Right.
Okay. It's never killed anybody on its own. And just to give you an idea of what you would need to do to yourself to kill yourself with THC, here's what you need to do. Roll yourself a joint the size of a utility pole and pack it good and tight and finish it within 15 minutes.
Ew. Yeah.
That's how you're going to do it. Okay. It literally will take that much in that duration of time. And I don't think that you could put enough THC in you at one time to even come close to that. I don't care how potent that shatter is and that you just put 5 grams of it in your banger. I don't care. It's still not enough to kill you. You might forget your name for a couple of days, but no, it's not going to kill you. And no, I've never had anything quite that drastic happen with it either.
No.
Although it is possible to get uncomfortably high. Yes. And you learned this recently.
I took too much of an edible.
Yeah.
And I was still high the next day. I had taken it around 9.
Edibles are like that.
And I was still like high as anything the next day.
Yeah.
It's
can be very uncomfortable.
It's unbearably weird.
Yeah, because what happens is your brain wants to go off in directions that you aren't necessarily following. It's sort of like when you're trying to follow somebody in traffic and they get several cars ahead. That level of anxiety, it's like, okay, I need to realign things here. I need to get back behind that car.
Right.
And for me, it's like, this has only happened, I can count on one hand the number of times that I've gotten uncomfortably high.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm like, oh, gee, I don't really like this very much. It can happen, but it doesn't happen very often. And the one thing that always goes through my head when it happens is, okay, let's come back to the real world. Let's stay with the real world for just a minute here. And now let's try and stay for 2. Now let's try and stay for 3. And one thing that helps if you ever find yourself in this position, okay, number 1, first time you smoke with someone who's already done it, who can guide you through and is going to look out for you. I think it's important. I think that the first time you smoke, it's important that you have somebody there that knows what they're doing and can help you. But beyond that, if you find yourself in that position, the easiest thing to do is to simply look around the room and vocalize the things that are around you. Flowers, chair, window, laptop, microphone, coffee cup, phone. And right out loud, you start saying the names of things that are in the room. What that does is it grounds you and it brings you back to the real world. Under ideal circumstances, you shouldn't have to do it. But if you wind up taking a little bit too much, or you wind up smoking a nug that's just more potent than the rest, and that can happen also.
Yeah.
I mean, I've smoked the same weed 3 and 4 times, and then on the 5th time, kazow,
Yeah.
But it can happen. But it's not something that's going to happen with any level of frequency. If you're smart, you know where to stop. When that happens, that for me, that's the best way to get back to the real world a little bit more. But I would say 99.9% of the times that I've smoked weed have been tremendously positive. And they've helped me understand myself more. They have helped me understand the value of the freedom that I have to make my own choices. And it has it's helped me to relate better to other people. I am more social and I'm more tolerant of people's idiosyncrasies when I've got a little bit in my head. Yeah. And that, to me, is the biggest benefit, because it allows me to be social. It allows me to make and keep friends. And it just, like I said before, it's an amazing thing to bond over. And I won her boyfriend over that day.
Yeah.
I really did. When I got home, I texted her and I said, so did he have anything to say? She's like, oh, he likes you. I'm like, bonus. Okay, so that means we're going to do this again. And we did. They were in our house multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
And even participated in some Wiccan ritual with us. They were the people that we were practicing with, that we talked about a bunch of episodes ago when we were talking about Wicca. These were the 2 that were practicing with us for a while. And their relationship was not great when she and I started talking. And it just got worse over time. And eventually she saw that and she got out of the relationship. And of course, that led to her not living around here anymore. She found somebody else, and they decided that they were going to yell do-over and move down south. And that's where she is now. But I still talk to her whenever I want.
Right.
Because through the marvels of technology, all I have to do is just send her a text. And usually within a few minutes or a few hours, I hear from her. And that has been a constant since she left. Let me put it to you this way. I've been way more neglectful of the relationship than she's ever been.
Right.
And I let my focus shift a little bit more than I should a couple of times. Once at the beginning, because I was really distraught. I didn't want her to go. And I was hurt that she did go. So there was some distance and some time there, but that really wasn't on her. That was on me.
Right.
And then let's not even talk about what was going on in this house last year. But she reminded me toward the end of the year, toward the very end of the year, after a bunch of other stuff had gone on, and things revolving around this one person in particular, she reminded me that it had been 3 months since I had talked to her. And the ironic part of that was that I had said something to you about having not
Yeah.
heard from her.
Right.
You see what my brain did there?
Yeah.
It kind of put it on her
Right.
when it was me being neglectful.
Right.
After I got it straight in my head where the neglect was coming from, I immediately texted her. And less than a week later was when the big blowout at Christmas happened.
Yeah.
Okay. And we had been talking for a few days before, and I had kind of confided in her some of the things that were going on. So when the shit hit the fan, I had my bestie there to help me. And who knows if she would have been if I hadn't texted her.
Right.
Because she was none too happy with me. I'll go on record. She was none too happy about the amount of time that I had been away.
Right.
And my first thought was, well, you could text me too. Bullshit. Come on. You have a responsibility here. You have a responsibility to keep up your end, and you're not. So don't you dare put it on her. This is one person that's been a constant.
Yeah.
When most others have found better things to do than be in my life. This person has been a constant. So to pin the blame on her for that was really, really selfish. And there were definitely apologies that were made. There were much kinder words and promises to not stray that far again. Sometimes you just gotta give precedent, and you've got to give priority to the people that make you a priority.
Right.
It's very important because most people won't. And someone like this, who could have bailed on me very easily when she moved away, she chose to stay in my life. And I owed her way better than that.
Yeah.
I owed her way better than what she got last year. But here's the thing. She's still here.
Yeah.
And that to me has taught me everything that I need to know about things like forgiveness and the value of relationships. It's taught me everything that I need to know about that. And it's amazing what you can learn from a stripper. It's amazing what you can learn from somebody who you meet under those kinds of circumstances. I mean, I met and interacted with a lot of entertainers at that club. A lot. But I didn't have a connection with any of the others. That was something that was unique to her. And there was a reason for that. And there was a reason why she's still in my life. Now that I've gotten off on that tangent, I thought that it would be a fun story. Because a lot of people, when I'm at work, I have an orange spider on my lanyard. And people have asked me the question many times what the spider is about. And what I tell them is uniformly this. The orange spider has to do with my first time smoking weed. That's the story that I tell the public. You want to know the rest? You got to buy me a beer or a joint. Or you got to smoke with me. Because if you smoke with me, I'll tell you. What better platform do you have for telling a story like that than passing around a bowl with somebody?
Yeah.
So I have told the story in smoke sessions before. And I love being able to tell it. And I love being able to tell it sometimes from slightly different angles, depending on what the context of the conversation is. But it all comes back to the same thing. I was given a really good experience with this out of the gate, just like when I would take those pinkies of scotch. Okay? It was made into something really good and really positive from the very beginning. So it's always been something good and something positive. That's why I say, if you're going to try it, get in a group and smoke with a group first. You'll be glad you did, because you'll really get a feel for what it does to you, but what it does to your group dynamic too. It's real interesting what it does to bring people together. I haven't been to a lot of stoner parties, but the last one that I was at, I thought that it was real interesting how many people walked in with 6-packs or cases of beer and then walked out with them at the end of the night because no one was drinking. We were so enthralled in all the different types of weed that was there and the different ways to do it that was the emphasis, and no one was drinking. It was really neat to see that, and to see the stark contrast between a party where alcohol is at the center of it and where weed is at the center of it. It's a completely different thing. Everyone was well behaved. It was at an apartment complex, and no cops were called. No neighbors complained. We were a sane group of people that we're there having a really good time, but minding our P's and Q's also. You see, the thing with weed is that it doesn't rob you of your inhibitions the way that alcohol does. So you start acting like an idiot and you don't even realize it when you're drunk. But when you're high, you start recognizing things more. You start noticing things more. And it's just sort of an expansion of the way that you normally see things. Nothing gets lost, but a lot gets added. And that's why I like it so much, because it allows me to explore corners of my brain that I can't when I'm straight. And it allows me to enjoy situations where I'm at a party with 20 other people and everyone is smoking weed. And the vibe that comes off of that is amazing. So I knew I was going to take a long time on this. Since I've been talking to the audience for the entire episode, I'm not going to do the whole turn my attention thing because I've been talking to them this whole time. But I do want to end off by highlighting a couple of other things that I did after I found myself with a little bit more freedom to make my own decisions. And the funny thing is, most of this stuff happened while I still had a toe in theism. I wasn't an atheist, but I also started understanding how important it was to make my own decisions about things. Just to give you a little bit more of a timeline, I got my ear pierced when I was 27, a year before Liam was born.
Right.
I got my ear pierced, and then I started getting tattoos around, I want to say 2012.
Right.
So I was older, and I had finally found myself in a position where my brain had become unbound enough from that thinking for me to start saying, this is okay, and this is okay. It's all right to do this and to do that. Yes, it's okay to have a tattoo. Yes, it's okay to have your ear pierced. Yes, it's okay to smoke some weed. You see, there's a lot of no's in evangelical Christianity. There's litanies of things that they don't want you to do. When you start making the decisions for yourself, yes, there are going to be instances and times where you have to say no. But you'll find that they are much fewer and further between. And you'll find that the things that you're saying no to are things that are literally harmful, that could literally hurt you, or that you literally just don't like. There's that. Trust your own instincts as to what's right and wrong. You don't need to go to the Bible, and you don't need to pray. Your brain is going to tell you whether or not something is right. Now, if you're sitting here and you're a ball of anxiety thinking about yourself smoking weed after hearing all of this, then maybe it's not something that you should try right now. Maybe it's something that you'll be more comfortable with later or never. And that's okay. Find your thing. Find your things. Find what is going to make you happy. That's the most important thing here. Be a little selfish about it. It's okay. As long as you're not hurting anyone else and your decisions aren't having negative impacts on other people, then it's okay to be a little bit selfish about what you want. But not to the point where you are hurting people that you love. Not to the point where you're doing things that are a detriment to you and your health or your happiness or anything else. And that's it. It's so important, especially when there are other people involved. It's not all about you, but it should be about you. And if you think that the things that you want could have an adverse effect on someone that you love, then talk to that person and say, hey, this is what's going on in my head right now. What do you think? It was the same situation as when we started talking about me going to a strip club.
Right.
We sat down and we talked about it. I didn't sneak there on my own.
Right.
You always knew that I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And it made it easy to enjoy.
Right.
It made it easy to just relax and enjoy what was going on, because I knew that I wasn't going to come home and wind up being questioned about why I smelled like perfume. You know?
Yeah.
Because you knew why I smelled like perfume.
Yeah.
Transparency and honesty can get you far. They can get you things that most people would be more inclined to just take. Most people, and a lot of guys who hung out at that club had girlfriends and wives that had no idea that they were there. Mm. And I always thought that I was lucky. I felt that I was really, really lucky being in the position that I was in. I didn't have to sneak around. I didn't have to lie. You always knew where I was.
Oh, yeah.
And you always know where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
If there's one major takeaway that I want people to get from this episode tonight, it's that it's way easier to get what you want when you're honest about what you want. When
Right.
you're honest with yourself And when you're honest with the other people that your decisions are going to affect, it makes it way easier to have the things that you want and be happy. I don't know how people who carry on affairs for years
Right.
can ever say that they're happy in their situation. They have a need for that other person, but they're never happy.
Right.
It's, and well, I shouldn't say never. And I don't like superlatives. It's very, very difficult to be happy under those circumstances where you're always worrying about being caught, or you're always worrying about what the consequences will be if and when you get caught. And it's not just in situations like that. I mean, you could have not liked the idea of me smoking weed.
Right.
You could have not liked the idea of a lot of the things that I've done, but you've always known my business. You've always known what I've been up to. And I think that it's really, really important that people understand that you get a lot further with honesty and transparency than you ever will with deception. And that also includes yourself. Don't kid yourself into thinking that you can be happy by following someone else's rules and guidelines. This is what we talked about last week. You are in charge of your own happiness. Pursue it. Pursue it your way. Pursue it with the things that are going to make you happy, the experiences that are going to make you happy, and the people that are going to make you happy. Whether it's person or people or anything else that you can concoct in your head about relationships and how you deal with other people who are not you. It's all good. It's all good. Just approach things with the right intent and with a degree of honesty with yourself and with anyone else that your actions are going to affect. It's the easiest way to make all of these things that we're talking about tonight, things that you are going to look back on and say, this was a good idea. Every one of my tattoos were good ideas. Getting my ear pierced was a good idea. Going to a strip club was a good idea. A very good idea. Let's just put it out there. I have the job that I have now because I went to that strip club.
Right.
Okay. So I have this amazing thing in my life called marijuana because I went to that strip club. All right.
Yep.
All of these things work together. So the things that you want and the things that you want to experience, a lot of it builds off of other things. And you'll never really experience these things, and you'll never really enjoy the experience of these things if you aren't being honest with yourself about your intentions and you aren't being honest with the people around you. If you think that there are people in your life that are going to have issues with some of the things that you want, then talk to them about it. Don't go off on your own. Don't hope that you don't get caught. Talk. And make sure that everyone in your life that matters, or to whom this thing matters, is on the same page with you. It's very, very important. And that really is my final note on this. And I'm not going to do the normal heavy ending here where I make the appeal to you to start using your brain a little bit more. Because if you've gotten through this entire episode, you're already interested in making things better for you and doing more for yourself. And you want to know how to do more for yourself. Well, everything that we talked about over the last hour and a half or so, these are the things that you want to be thinking about. Whether or not it's making you happy, whether or not it's having a positive effect on the people around you, these things matter. But first and foremost, your happiness matters. And the people who are in your life, who see the type of person that you are, know the type of person that you are, your personality, your tendencies, whatever, they're going to understand if you just sort of bring it up one day, I'd kind of like to go to a strip club. They may not like it, but they'll understand. And if there isn't an immediate agreement on this thing, at least you've opened the door for discussion. And you can decide between the two of you, three of you, or whoever it is that's having the conversation. You can decide how you're going to proceed based on how it's going to affect everyone.
Right.
Okay? And there will be give and take involved. Not everything that you're going to want to do is going to be handed to you with carte blanche. There will be compromises. There will be certain instances where you're just going to have to put things on the back burner. And that's just the way it is. But if you hear nothing else in this message tonight, I want you to hear this. Do what makes you happy all the time, okay? Not just when you think that the people around you are going to accept it. Do what makes you happy. Make strides toward being happy. Be open, be honest, be transparent with the people that you love, who your actions are going to affect. And beyond that, just have a good time with your life. You don't have any external forces to answer to when it comes to moral choices that you make, unless they're big ones like killing someone or raping someone. You have the power to make the decisions for your own about the things that you're going to do and experience. You do not need the counsel of Bronze Age humans. You do not need someone standing behind a pulpit. You need you, and you need your own conscience, and that is it. Like I've said before, it's a simple concept, but it is not easy in the application. Learning how to be you is going to take some time, especially if you've been in this thing for a long time. Learning how to be you is going to take time, and it's going to take effort. So don't just jump into things because they seem like taboo at the time and they seem like they would be fun at the time. Where's your head now? Something that looked like a good time 5 years ago may not today. Something that seemed like a good idea 5 years ago may not today. So don't base what you experience now on what you missed out on then, unless it's still in the forefront of your mind that this is something that you want to experience for yourself. And regardless of what it is, as long as it isn't going to hurt you or anyone else, you have the right and the responsibility to experience it if you can. I'm going to go smoke a bowl. You're going to go get yourself unbound. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Unbound. Show topics are chosen based on their timeliness, relevance, and social impact. Have suggestions for future topics? Email us at unbound.podcast.network@gmail.com with all your comments and feedback. Please don't forget to like, share, and throw a few 5-star ratings our way, and follow us on all major social platforms. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Links to our social pages, as well as a full list of cited sources in today's episode, are listed in the show notes, available at our website, getunbound.org. That's get-unbound.org. If you value this resource and would like to see it continue, please consider supporting us on Patreon at the link in the show description. And be sure to check for new updates every Sunday when we'll come together again and take one more step toward getting and staying unbound.